previous shirim on this week's parsha are on TorahAnytime.com. There is the Pesach Classic series, which are all audio recordings. There is the Israel Diaries, part 1, 2, and 3. There is a shir from a couple of years ago called 2B1. That's digit 2 and then letter B and then numeral 1. Also called What Lies Beneath. And from last year, there was a shir called Be What You Are, Do What You Do. And also, from last week, there was a shir called The Unexpected. All are on TorahAnytime.com. Good luck. Anyway, so I hope you're all having a wonderful Pesach and a good Moed. We've now passed the 2 Sedarim here in the UK, Baruch Hashem. We're still here. We've got the Moed to look forward to, and in a few days' time we'll have the 7th day, which is the anniversary of going through the Red Sea. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. A couple of chidushim, a couple of interesting points before I get into the real story. I'm also going to tell you that story that I was going to tell you last week, which I didn't have time for. So one chidush. For this you have to, if you're watching this on Torah Anytime, you'll be able to get this. If you're listening to it on an MP3, forget it, you'll be lost on this one. But anyway, I'll do it very quickly. So I spoke to my brother Rav Natanel, and he told me a nice, interesting chidush from him. He said like this. He said, in Mitzrayim, we were all prisoners. Now, what is the common factor with anyone who's a prisoner? Well, the first thing a prisoner has is his arms are outstretched in front of him. Yeah, you think of a normal prisoner in prison, his arms are like this, outstretched. Yeah. The second thing that's common to every prisoner is that they look downcast. They're always looking down. And the third thing that he said was they all have like a very far away, like distant look in their eyes. Yeah. So if you think about that, if you put that together, you know, your arms are like this, and your head is down, and you're looking far away, and you'll have what my brother very cleverly works out as looking like somebody who's on his phone texting. Yeah, the ultimate modern day prisoner. Very, very clever. He actually described that to me over the phone. Kol hakavod. So. Yeah, I'm glad. First of all, I was glad to hear that my brother shares the same enthusiasm with me about very anti-phone misuse and abuse. But it's a nice little thing. You know, he's a maggid shir in the mirror, and he gives high level shiurim, way beyond me. But it's nice to know he can give something a little bit more simple and sort of at least down to my level. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing. Now listen to this. I'm very happy to speak about this following thing. So it says in the Shema that we should not follow Elohim Acherim. Yeah? We shouldn't follow Elohim Acherim. What does Elohim Acherim mean? Other gods. So a question that I had for years was, how come the Ribbon Shel Olam put in his holy Torah, don't follow other gods? I mean, surely Hashem knows that these gods, they're not gods. And although we spell it with a small g in English, and we call it Elohim Acherim, but like the first word that I mentioned, Elohim, also, lahavdil, to make a complete separation, we use that when we describe Hashem himself. So how come God describes these worthless blocks of stone and wood, garbage, hevel, all the bad words you can think of? He describes them as other gods. But that name is, although it really means, Elohim actually means mighty men, like something mighty. But why would you use that word? Just use a word like don't serve trash, don't serve garbage, don't serve nonsense, don't serve hevel varik, as we say in Aleinu. Why Elohim Acherim? So I asked this, at the Seder table, and believe it or not, my 9-year-old son Rafi put his hand up. He said, "Daddy, I've got an answer for you." So he said to me like this. He said, "You know why we call them gods and we don't call them trash?" He says, "Because if we call them trash, hevel, whatever word you want to use for trash, the idolaters won't think that you're talking about their idols. They'll think, you're talking about trash. God can't be talking about, or the Shema and the Torah can't be talking about my gods. My gods are gods. They're everything I live for." But no, they're talking about trash. You're talking about all the other people, all the time wasters. Me, my gods are superb and they're supreme. I call them gods. But so my son Rafi said, "Look, Hashem, if we call them gods, these idolaters will realize that, we're talking, now you're talking about what I worship. You're calling them gods? I call them gods as well." So, it's like Hashem is talking directly to the idolaters on their level. Because, of course, we know that they're trash. But we're talking to the idolater on their level. He will realize that the Torah is talking about the things that the idolater holds very dear and very close. So that's an interesting idea. I wanted to add on to that it also gives them, these idolaters, a chance of at least recognizing what they do, their evil, and then they've got a chance to do teshuvah. Because if you just tell them trash, it'll go over their head. You're not talking to me. You're talking to other people. I don't waste my time worshipping trash. I worship gods. Okay, so that's an interesting idea. It does tie in a little bit with the answer I wanted to give, in that, of course, these idols of wood and stone and metal are worthless. They're not even worth the material that they're made of. We all know that. However, why are they called gods? Because it's not, God refers to them as Elohim, but it's us, it's the idolater, not us. The idolaters themselves invest them with that power. Of course, objectively, if you look at this stone, it's garbage. But who invests it with a power that, they think it's going to be a deity? It's the person who's worshipping it. It's nothing to do with anybody else. The person who worships it, he invests it with a power. Or at least he thinks he invests it with a power to become a deity, something he can worship and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so Hashem is talking to them and saying, you are the ones who call them Elohim Achirim. Not me. I know they're garbage, says God. I know they're worthless. You're the one who makes them into these Elohim Achirim. So there's a little bit of a different spin on what my son said. And I told him, I was so happy. I said to Rafi, I'm going to tell it in my share. So he was very happy. Hopefully he'll think of other good chidushim as well and give us some nachas, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so I'm going to tell you now the story that I had to miss out last week, which is a bit of a strange story to start with. It's normally like a story I would tell at the end. It's a little bit of a long story. I'm going to start with it anyway, because just a bit of a segue from last week. So the story I heard on a shir by Rav Fishel Schachter from America, who I'm a big fan of, as you probably know, if you've listened to any of my other shirim. So he tells the following story. He says, in the year, I think it was 1953, there was a shiva, I can't remember the name of the yeshiva, in Israel, and there was a group of Talmidim in this particular yeshiva who were very studious, and they completed the Masechet, the Gemara of Kiddushin, beginning to end. And they made a siyum, and it was a big simcha, because I don't know how long they must have spent on this particular Masechet. So as a reward for these boys, they organized a trip from their yeshiva in Yerushalayim to Meron, where they were going to probably go to the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and all the Kvarim there, all the other graves of the tzaddikim there. Yeah? See, in those days, yeshiva bochrim were easily pleased. Nowadays, if you learn a Masechet, if you're a modern day yeshiva boy, you'd probably want an iPhone or whatever. Actually, I don't want to say anything bad about our yeshiva. But anyway, in those days, it was enough for them to have this trip because they never got out in yeshiva. So this was like a field trip for them. So they went on this trip, and it was one of these rickety old buses, like you get in Israel. What can I tell you? In those days, in the 50s, there wasn't like a modern bus system they have now. I mean, probably they drove at the same speed as the buses in Israel do now, which is very, very fast. So the driver was like one of these Israeli guys, and he's got this trailer, like an open trailer, and what they had like a thing on the top, like a roof on the top, just like a pergola type of roof. So it was open on all four sides, and then this roof just to shield the boys in the back from the from the elements, from the sun. So they went on this trip, and it was a very, if you know Meron, it's a very windy mountain. So they're going up in the hills, and if you've ever been in a bus on any of those mountains, and you don't look out the side because you'll see like a sheer drop, and there's no barrier on the side. It's just like literally the road and what's beneath. So if you're driving up there at some speed, it can seem a little bit scary, as you're winding out these roads. And, if you can imagine the type of trailer that we're talking about, you can imagine it must have been swinging left and right. Anyway, the driver, he took a few stops along the way, because I think they said it was something like a 7-hour journey, which is incredible. So he took a stop or something along the way, and they stopped at Kever Rachel. That's right. They stopped at Kever. I don't know at what point in the journey that was. They stopped at Kever Rachel, and all the boys, and also there was one of the rabbis was there as well. They all went to the mikveh, and they convinced the bus driver, come with us to the mikveh, come and dip in the mikveh with us. Fine. So he went in with it. He'd never been in the, or maybe for years he'd never been in the mikveh. He was a secular Jew, but you get swept up. So he went to the mikveh, and they carried on driving, and the driver was tired, and they told him, look, maybe you want to stop and take a rest. He said, no, yalla tamshich, we're going to carry on. So he's carrying on, and he's flying up this mountain. And what happens? He turns around a corner, and he took it too fast. Who knows what happened? They fly off the edge of the cliff, and the thing goes tumbling, and the whole truck falls on top of this driver. The driver gets killed immediately, and apparently there were quite a few of the boys on this truck. 4 of them, or it could be 3 or 4 of them, were killed. And there was a lot who survived. I'm sure there was a lot of injuries, but most of them survived. 3 of these boys were killed. It was a terrible tragedy, because these were boys who were they were not kids who were wasting their time. These were kids who were yeshiva bochrim. And they were like innocent. What on earth could they have done? So this story came back to Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, who basically went on the next day, Shacharit, he opened the Aron HaKodesh, and he burst out crying, as only Rav Chaim Shmulevitz could do. He was crying and pleading to Hashem, please, why did this happen? He wanted to know why. Why could such a terrible thing? 3 innocent lives. Yeah? Unfortunately, this is not the only time 3 innocent lives have been taken, and for seemingly no... Anyway, Hashem has his reasons, but it's totally baffling. So he cried, and he couldn't understand. He couldn't work out what the answer was. Now, one of the boys who had died had a nephew, and his name was, it escapes me for the moment, but let's call him Shaul. Let's call him Shaul. So this nephew was studying at the same yeshiva where all the boys came from. So he was particularly struck by this whole incident. He couldn't get past it. His uncle, who was a tzaddik, Gamur, had died in this accident. He took it in a very bad way. And he was beating himself up about it, as it were. He couldn't get over it. And he had a dream one night. I'm not sure how long after the incident. And in his dream, his uncle appeared to him. And his uncle said to him, "No, why are you crying? Why are you mourning? Enough already. They're giving me hassle in Shamayim because you keep mourning and crying about me. It's enough already. I'm okay where I am. Why are you mourning me?" So in the dream, the nephew was like, "What? I don't understand. What happened to you? Why did this happen?" So he said, "Don't worry about why it happened, but just realize that I'm okay. In fact, I am in the yeshiva of none other than Rashi himself, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the 11th century Bible commentator, and the Gemara and Talmud commentator, the famous Rashi." So his nephew was shocked. How come you merited to be in the yeshiva and learn with Rashi? He said, you know why? He said, because when I was alive, I used to learn Rashi religiously, if you excuse the pun. I was constantly learning Rashi. So when I came to this world, the next world he meant, they put me in the yeshiva with Rashi, and now I learn in the same yeshiva with Rashi. And then the nephew, Shaul, woke up. Now, of course, you don't take a dream like that and keep it to yourself. So the next day he went into yeshiva and told everybody. Now, this was a Litvish yeshiva, an Ashkenazi yeshiva. It was not a Sephardi yeshiva. If it was a Sephardi yeshiva, you know what would have happened. They would have gone, "Oh, Ruach HaKodesh!" You would have loved it. They would have come, made him a chacham, made him a baba, done something with him. But we Sephardim, we love these type of stories. We thrive on these type of stories. But this was a Litvish yeshiva. So, of course, everyone who heard the story said, not to his face, but they took it with a pinch of salt. What do you mean? You had a dream about your uncle? Is it learning with Rashi? Mapito. So nobody really gave the dream any credence. Meanwhile, the boy was so convinced by the dream of his uncle, he would not let it go. And he kept telling people, "Yes, he's there." And people kept being cynical. And as time wore on, the months and the weeks and the months wore on, he himself started doubting his own dream. He thought, you know what? Maybe it was just a figment. Not every dream is true. In fact, rarely dreams are true. So forget it. It's just never mind. But he was depressed because his uncle had passed away. He had no idea. And according to the story told by Rav Shachter, this kid, he must have been couldn't have been more than about 20, 21 maybe. He took on himself to fast. He said, "I'm going to fast." I don't know how often, how many times a week, who knows. But he would fast. I want to know why my uncle passed away. What's the reason? I want to know, is he okay? So, I guess it must have been about maybe a year to 18 months after the incident, he had another dream of his uncle. And his uncle said, "Look, I told you already, stop mourning, stop this. I'm okay where I am. It's not good for me that you're doing all this. Leave it, drop it." So he said, "Look, uncle, I know you appeared to me before. I want to know if this is true. This could be a dream that's not true. I want something from you that's going to show me without a shadow of a doubt that this dream is 100% true." So his uncle said, "Okay, fine, I'll tell you. I'll tell you like this. You will meet a girl, her name will be Yehudit, and her father's name will be Shlomo. Yehudit bat Shlomo. And this is the girl you're going to marry. And after you get engaged, it will come out that this girl's uncle, so the brother of her father, who, according to all accounts, had died in the death camps in the Second World War. By all accounts, he was dead. Nobody had anything for him Remember, he was dead. That's it, finished. He will turn up again. He will announce himself and say, I'm here and I'm alive. And then this boy Shaul, he woke up from his dream. Now, he didn't tell everybody about the dream because he had he had a proof waiting to come true. So you think, okay, let's see what's going to come true. Now, what happened? First thing happened, his parents started saying to him, look, what's all this fasting? What's all this mourning? You're moping around. You need to get a shidduch. You need to get married. Let's help you with it. This will bring you out of depression. Fine. So he says, okay, I agree. I need to get married. I'm of marriageable age. Okay, so find me a shidduch. So they find him a shidduch. No prizes for guessing. Which girl turns up? A girl called Yehudis. Okay, so already now he's thinking, uh-oh, what's going to be? So the first thing he asked is, what's the name of our father? Yeah? So they say, oh, but they don't know his second name, but his first name is Shlomo. Uh-oh. So now what does he do? He goes to his Rav, and he tells his Rav the whole story. He says, listen, can I marry this girl based on this dream? Because, look, you're about Shlomo. What more proof do you want? The rabbi says, you do not marry a girl on the basis of a dream like that. Go out and see if she's the right girl for you. Fine. So he goes out with her, and they get on well. And he wants to get married to this girl. So I think they get engaged. And then he goes to the father, Shlomo, and he says, did you have a brother who perished in the war? He said, yes, it was terrible. We were part of, he told him that basically the father spilled out the whole story. My brother is dead. And he said, so the boy said, listen, believe it or not, he's alive. I said, what do you mean he's alive? I know he's dead. I was in a selectia with him. They'd said, told me go to the right, and him go to the left. The ones on the right lived, the ones on the left did not live. For sure, what are you talking about? No, he is alive, and he's going to come. You're going to see him very shortly. So the father starts thinking, hey, maybe this guy's a bit loopy. Maybe we can have to break off the shidduch. Why is he talking like this? Like he's a Navi. Sure enough, there's a knock on the door, or there's a communication, and the father sees his brother again. He turns up and he tells him the story. He said, look, I escaped from the camp. Nobody knew. I think he said he joined the partisans, and he went to, and then he got captured. He went to Siberia. There was a whole big Ganze Meise, and of course he couldn't get in contact with the family. But now he'd got out of Siberia, and he'd found his way, and he said, look, here I am, right? So now the father couldn't believe it. And now this boy Shaul knows for sure that his uncle was really in Gan Eden, and was really learning in the Shiva with Rashi. Now, why am I telling this story? Not because you have to believe in any dream that you have. No, of course not. And certainly you shouldn't be fasting to find out, for your own benefit, to put your mind at ease. It's not the thing we do. But just to know that there are stories that prove that we can get messages from the other side. The people are there, and they do offer proofs. And okay, look, this is not an ideal story for demonstrating about Olam Haba and people in Shammai. But it's something to think about, to know that, people often say to me, how do I know? How do I know what's going to be? There was, I wasn't going to say this, but this past week, I met somebody, I don't want to mention his name, but he is a famous Jewish, let's call him a comedian. He's a comedian stroke actor. Yeah, I personally, I've never met him until then. I was in a restaurant with my two youngest boys, and he just turned up and he sat next to us. And I thought, well, who is this guy? And people are coming up to him and asking him. And it turns out that it is this famous person. So for me, it doesn't make a difference if famous or not famous. If you're Jewish and you're next to me, you deserve the. I want to hear. I want to hear from you. I want to speak to you. So I started to speak to him, and it turns out that I know his brother. I knew his brother from years ago. So I said to him, how's your brother? And he was shocked. How do you know my brother? And I told him how I know him and everything. And we talked for about half an hour. And he told me, I'm here because 2 weeks ago my father passed away. Yeah, and this is somebody who is not religious, as far as I know, in the slightest. And he had a beard. So he told me he's saying Kaddish and he's growing his beard for the Shloshim. So I said, what you're doing is unbelievable. I said, your father is getting such benefit in Shemayim. So he said to me, really? And he said to me, I've spoken to 3 rabbis before, and I asked them, what happens to the soul of a person after he passes away? And none of them could give me any answer. I said, look, I don't know what you asked them or how they are. I said, of course, if they knew anything, they would have told you. Maybe he didn't ask the question right. And I spoke to him about the 3 levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. We started talking touch a little bit on Kabbalah and what it means and how the different stages of the soul when they leave and everything. And he was fascinated. You could see that it really struck a chord with him. So, maybe I should have told him this story. But as it happens, he finishes Shwarm and he went out to the restaurant. But he was visibly moved by what I told him. This is somebody who, as far as I know, has next to no exposure. But having said that, this guy's saying Kaddish. This guy's saying Kaddish to his father every day. He's going to He told me, I'm putting on my father's tefillin. Isn't that unbelievable? Ein kamo Yisrael. You see, however far they are, they never leave the fold. There's always something inside them that says, you know what? Maybe there's something more to this. Maybe there's something more to this lifestyle that I'm living. And he acted on it. I hope Bezrat Hashem he'll make a complete turnaround. Anyway, that's all by the by. So, let's talk a little bit about Pesach after all of this first half an hour. So, as if I haven't told you enough stories already, here's another story. So now, we're talking about people who want to believe that they're going to get Olam Haba. So, the story is told of somebody who came to the Khatam Sofer. The Khatam Sofer, we've talked about it many, many times in the past, from Pressburg. The Khatam Sofer was approached by this fellow, and he also didn't seem very orthodox, very religious. So the Khatam Sofer said to him, look, what, you're not keeping anything. How are you assured that you will merit a share in the world to come? Because it says everybody has a share in the world to come, but you have to merit it. It's there waiting for you. But if you don't merit it, then God forbid, I don't want to say anything. But the Khatam Sofer said, how do you know you're going to get Olam Haba? So the fellow said, easy. Everyone who says easy, it's really not easy for them. Yeah? This is a fellow who, again, kept next to nothing. He said, easy, Rabbi, for all I do, there is one thing that I do punctiliously. I do this every day. I say Ashrei 3 times a day. You say Ashrei in the afternoon, twice in the morning, one before, one after Amidah, and one in the afternoon. And it says, and this guy is telling the Khatam Sofer, anyone who says Ashrei 3 times a day is assured he's going to get Olam Haba. Yeah? Now, if I would have heard that, I would have said, oh, okay, very good. There's not much to add to that. But the Khatam Sofer had something very important to add to that. What happened? When he was talking to this fellow, one of the boys in the yeshiva came in, and he had like a terrible cold or flu or something. He was coughing and spluttering. The Khatam Sofer said, what's the matter with you? He said, Rabbi, I've got this terrible cough. I can't get over it. Rabbi, what should I do? Should I take medicine for it? The rabbi said, well, it depends. Where do you live? So the fellow told the rabbi, he said, Rabbi, I live in like a furnace, like a cold shed, somewhere, and there's no heating in there, and that's where I live. In those days, the yeshiva bochrim were lucky to have a roof over their head. So he said, that's where I live. So the rabbi said, look, for you, medicine won't do any good. Because as soon as you take the medicine, the environment you're living in will bring you down again. You're living in a very bad environment. It's cold, it's damp. You're going to get this chest infection again and again and again. It's like, you'll get cured, you'll get the thing again. You get cured, you get the thing again. So it's no good. You have to move out of where you are. And then the Khatam Sofer turned to this fellow in front of him and said, you want to know what your Ashrei is going to do? If you're a person who's keeping Torah mitzvot, and let's say you get something, you do a little Aveira. Okay, we're all human. That Ashrei will save you. Yeah, it will save you because you're in a proper environment. But you're not doing any Torah mitzvot. For you, your Ashrei is not doing anything for you. Because as soon as you get healed, you're going to be brought down again. It's like filling a bucket with a hole in it. You see the important message there? Of course, Ashrei is power. Saying Ashrei 3 times a day is unbelievable. But that's not the only thing you have to do. Ashrei 3 times a day and go and live a hedonistic lifestyle and don't do any mitzvot. That's not going to do you any good. So it's very important. That's why on Pesach, this Chag of Pesach is replete with mitzvot. We learn about mitzvot and we do mitzvot. It's the most beautiful, powerful, passionate time to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Especially this Seder night, when we connect through the generations, from father to son. It's the most beautiful time. So, now let me ask you a small question. On Seder night, we say, at the end, right at the end, we say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. There is one other time in the year, and one other time only, that we say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. You can tell me when that is.
Yom Kippur.
Correct, very good. On Kol Nidrei night, we say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. But we don't say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim by Sukkot, or by Shavuot, or by Rosh Hashanah. Why not? Only those 2 times a year? So listen to this beautiful answer. Because on Rosh Hashanah, we have the shofar. That's the main part of Rosh Hashanah is the shofar. We're not lacking any. Of course, we're lacking the Korban Musaf. We're lacking the Avodah we are lacking. We're lacking the Beit HaMikdash. But the main thing about Rosh Hashanah is the shofar. On Shavuot, what's the main thing about Shavuot? The Torah. On Sukkot, what's the main thing about Sukkot? The Sukkah and the Arba Minim. We have those as well. So we have the main components of those 3 Chagim. What are we missing on Seder night? The most important thing, the focus of the Seder, is the Korban Pesach. We don't have the Korban Pesach. And there are so many mitzvot associated with the Korban Pesach. Look at what they did in leaving Egypt. They had to have the stick, they have to have the belt around them, they mustn't break the bone. So many halachot to do with the Korban Pesach. We don't have anything like that now. So we're missing that. And what about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, of course we're missing something. On Yom Kippur, we're missing the Avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. That whole thing that we read. You look at the Musaf on Yom Kippur, how long it is. That's all what they used to do in the Beit HaMikdash. The Kohen used to do this long service. We have none of that. All we can do is read about it. That's all we can do. We don't have a Beit HaMikdash. So of course, these 2 times, Pesach and Yom Kippur, they're seminal times when we cry and we scream, we're missing something. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, we want the Beit HaMikdash back. Beautiful idea. So, another story I have about Emunah, a little bit of one of these sort of Sephardi type stories that we love. We love these miracle stories. Isn't this story? So this story was also happened in the 50s when the Israelis were at war. This is the war, the Sinai campaign. So the story goes that there was a troop of soldiers. There was a unit of soldiers in the war. They had a mission. They had 15 tanks. They went into the Egyptian territory, and they had a tight schedule. They had a plan, and it had to be followed to the letter. As they were going through, right, everything was going fine, as planned. Suddenly, they see from nowhere 60 Egyptian tanks. And they were, I believe, only 15 tanks. 4 times as many tanks. And these tanks were not like the same as the Israeli ones. They were much bigger, better. So now, oy vey. Now, when you see something like that, it's like an ant confronting an elephant. Forget it. We're gone. We're finished. So what would happen in that situation? So there's nothing they could do. So this general, he was not very orthodox at all, but he knew that there's something called the Shema. And this is what you say when you're going to die. So he says to them, look, Chevra, he says to his troop, this is it. We're not going to come out of this. We will stay here and we will say Shema Israel, and that will be our end. Okay, and everyone agreed, except for one guy. There was one of those soldiers who had payot, it was a religious, apparently it was a chassid. He said to his commanding officer, he said, "What, are you giving up? That's it? You're not going to go down without a fight?" So the officer said, "Look, it's useless. We're outnumbered 4-1 and the tanks are huge. That's it. Just say your Shema and leave this world in peace." He said, "No." He said, if you permit me, I'm going to suggest a strategy and let's do this. So the officer said, look, we won't lose anything. He says, this is what you're going to do. We're going to go full steam ahead. I'm going to give the signal. I mean, this Chassid just basically took charge. So when I give the signal, scream with all your might, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Then, I presume they're on foot at this point, then shoot your first round of ammunition, and then, he's very confident, this guy, this Chassid, he said, and then Hashem will help us. Yeah? I mean, this guy you've got to give it to him. He was not going down without a fight. So look, what can we do? We're going to go down. So they go and they charge at them. Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad. What happens? The tanks, this is not normal what happens now. The tanks stop. They get out. One of them gets out, starts waving a white flag. Right? And probably the soldiers, the Israeli soldiers, taking a double take. What? What happened? What just happened here? So what happened? They come, they capture the Egyptians. Yeah, they just surrendered chick-jack. So they come and they take them, and after they take them prisoner, this commanding officer says to the commanding officer of the Egyptians, he says, look, you know and I know that you were 60 and we were 15. We ran at you on foot and you just gave up. Why? Why did you give up? He said, what do you mean? This Egyptian, probably in Arabic, he said, what do you mean? When we saw the 20 planes flying in the sky, we knew that we were goners. So we came out. We didn't want the planes to come and kill us. So we surrendered to you. So the Israeli officer said, what planes? So the planes were flying over. All of us saw the planes. So the Israeli said, there were no planes above us. We didn't see any planes. The Egyptian probably said something like Majnun. Yeah, Majnun means you're mad. Said, all of us saw the plane. What are you? So apparently this Israeli officer went and he checked. He did surveillance. I don't know how he checked. There were no planes in that area at that time. It was a nace. It was a miracle. And this is not something that one person saw and nobody. This is an entire troop of Egyptian soldiers and the Israeli soldiers. They saw it. The Jews didn't. How did that happen? You know why? Because you put yourself in a situation. You say, Ribono Shel Olam, I'm in your hands. No tank is going to help me. No gun is going to help me. Of course, they did the hishtadlut. They made the effort. They fired one round. Okay, fine. They did what they had to do. But that's just what we have to do. The rest is in your hands. It's nothing to do with us. And Hashem came out And that's what happened. It's a famous story. And this Jewish commanding officer, he became a Baal Tshuva after that. How could he not become a Baal Tshuva after that? After seeing such a miracle, open miracle. Beautiful story. But that's really what Pesach is about. We have to realize, Hashem, we have the ultimate Hakarat Tov for you. Because we're in your hands. We would have been finished. We were at the 49.999th level. One masha, one iota more, and that would have been finished. We would have been gone. And you scooped us up before, at the 9th hour. That's it. And you saved us. Why? We have to realize we are totally and completely in Hashem's hands. Even if we think and we quote unquote know that we're in control, we're not in control at all. We know we've got the best army. Yeah, you've got the best army. You can see what happens to the best army. Yeah, we've got this Iron Dome. Yeah, we've got this, we've got that. You've got nothing. You've got nothing. You've got Ishtadlut. That's what you've got. You've got effort. Just to show on paper that you did something. Shkoyach. Yeah, but you've got Hashem. You've got Hashem behind you. And talking about being mishubad, being slaves, let's talk about something that says in the Haggadah that really doesn't make sense. How do we open up the Maggid, the Haggadah? We say, Halach ba'anya, diachalo avatana. This is the bread of affliction that we ate. Yeah? We are slaves. And we're still slaves. And Lashon haba, we will be free. Now we're slaves, we will be free. So the idea is that we're slaves. We're still, and it's true. We're in Galut. We're not free people. Okay. So we can exercise our religious prerogatives, but we're still slaves. Yeah? Whatever the Jew says counts for nothing. The Jew has no influence on anything. The nations hate us for the greater part, and we can't trust anybody except for Hashem. So we're slaves. But the next moment, we have our little kids say, Ma nishtana. What's Ma nishtana all about? It says, we lean, we dip twice, all these things, all these lovely things. Why? Because we're free. Because we're free. We can do all these things. We're kings. What is all that about? Are we slaves or are we free? The next moment. It's not like one is at one end of the Haggadah and one is at the other end. It's next to each other. So what's going on? Are we slaves or are we free? So the idea that I saw, it requires a little bit of explanation, but let this idea run through your head and you'll see it really makes sense. Because you can be a slave and you can, your main religious liberties could be taken away. For all intents and purposes, you can be a prisoner in your own country. But yet you can be the most free person. And the flip side of it is, a person can be free, completely at liberty to do what he wants, but he can be the biggest slave. What does this mean? Us in Galut, yeah, when we're all in Galut, doesn't matter how much free we are, we're not free at all. Why? Because Mashiach is not here. We're not at liberty to go to our country and to have a Beit HaMikdash. We're not at liberty for that to happen. Yeah, so we are in Galut. Now, we know that we will be freed. We will be free. We know that. Why? Plainly and simply because Hashem said so. And that is good enough for everybody, for every Jew, for everybody. Hashem said so, it's going to happen. It's not some fairy tale. It might happen, and Eliyahu Hanavi might come to our Seder. He never came for 2,000 years. Really, we know he's not going to come. But we put out the cup anyway, just to, it's for show, and the kids have a bit of a laugh. No! He's going to come. The question is when? Is it going to be this year or next year, chas v'chalila? Or the year after, chas v'chalila? We want it this year. Not it might happen. There's no might. There's no if. There's no but. There's no maybe. It's going to happen. It's going to be when. That's why we talked about this last week. That's why we pour the cup. It's not like a joke. We do it and we tip over the cup and, oh, Eliyahu's drinking from the thing. It's not a joke. We're trying to say, look, you know what? Maybe it's going to happen. After 2,000, 3,000 years, waiting and wasting the wine every year, pouring the cup of Eliyahu away, maybe this year it's going to happen. We do not give up hope. That's not a Jewish idea. So we are definitely in Galut, but we will definitely be free. So we have that outlook. So as far as we're concerned, it's like we're free men now. We're just waiting for the green light. That's what we're waiting for. But slaves, is this going to be a permanent thing? No way. But yet at the same time, a person could feel, I can do whatever I want. I can go do what I want, whenever I want, with whom I want. The world is my oyster. I've got enough money. I've got all the time in the world. My businesses run themselves. I can jet around the world like Sir Richard Branson. Branson, sorry, not Branston. Sir Richard Branson, do what I want. Fire extinguishers at everybody. No problem, I'll do what I want. Nobody's going to bat an eyelid. Yeah? You think you're free? You're the biggest slave. I'm not talking to Sir Richard Branson. I'm talking generally. Why? Because you're a slave to your Yetzer Hara. You can think, eat what you want, do what you want. No. You are the biggest slave because you have enslaved yourself to the Yetzer Hara. So you think you have every liberty open to you? You're shut down, you're closed down, and you cannot move. You cannot move forward. That's the idea behind Pesach. We are, for all intents and purposes, we are mishubad, we're slaves, but we're the biggest, we're the freest people. But yet, if you don't have Torah mitzvot, then you're the biggest slave. That's the idea. We have to keep our eyes to the future. Our eyes are firmly focused on that moment when Mashiach will come. Not might come, when he will come. We're hoping every day he's going to come. And that's how we keep our eyes focused firmly on the future. Hopefully it won't be too far future. Okay, just a couple more points before I let you go. This Thursday night, as we said, is going to be the anniversary of when the Jews crossed the Yam Suf. And this is a big time for the women. The women should hold their heads up proud because although the Jews went through, the men went through, they sang, Yeshu Moshe Uvenei Israel. Yeah. Who were not far behind? The women. The women were there with Miriam. And they also sang Yeshu Moshe. You know, they sang the song from beginning to end. The whole song. Together with the tupim and the machal, they made a whole big tizmoret. Beautiful, going through. It was amazing. Can you imagine? Well, we were there. We all were there. But can you imagine physically now seeing such a thing? The women singing and screaming, and the babies in the mother's womb, and even the babies that were just born, they miraculously started singing. The babies in the womb, the wombs became transparent, and the fetuses saw, and they pointed, Zekeli Vandeu. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, the women sang the whole song from beginning to the end. However, look in the Torah. What does it say? One pasuk. It picks one pasuk. It says, Vatikach Miriam. Miriam took the women and whatever. And it says, one pasuk, Sus v'rochovo ramavayam. Yeah, that's from the pasuk that is quoted in the Torah. Horse and rider sank in the sea. What? Why doesn't it just say the women sang the whole song? Or, you know what, say the song again. Say, this is what the women sang. And then quote it again. Okay, so you don't want to quote it again. Just say the women sang like the men. Why this one pasuk? It seems like that's all they said. And we know that's not all what they said. So listen to this. And also, why is it so significant that was the pasuk that's quoted? Horse and rider were thrown into the sea. What's that got to do with the women? Why is that the most important pasuk? Horse and rider. That pasuk talks about how the Egyptians came through, and the horses were killed with the Egyptians. And that's another question. What did the horses do wrong? Say the Egyptians were killed. The horses could have just galloped off, could have gone to the other side of the Red Sea, and the Jews would have had lovely, beautiful Egyptian horses. The Egyptian horses, by the way, are the best in the world. Yeah, an Egyptian steed, from memory, is the world's fastest horse. You know that? It's a beautiful, strong horse. Why have them killed? Give them to the Jews. Okay, the Egyptians can sink and drown, even the chariots. But save the horses. What do the horses do wrong? So listen to this idea. When the women came out, they heard the men singing, and the women felt hard done by. They said, look, the whole Yetziat Mitzrayim is because of us. It's true. In the zechut of the holy Jewish women, everybody went out because of them. Everybody. Why? Because they believed in it. Because they helped their husbands. Because they were there all the time. They had no doubt. They were the ones who were behind. They were the monea. They pushed the whole thing through. So they said, look, we're second-class citizens. Miriam said, no way. No way. We're singing the whole song beginning to end. And you know what? The pasuk that's given in the Torah is sus v'rochav horse and rider. So Miriam the Torah quotes this pasuk for a reason. You know why? Because the question is asked, what did the horses do wrong? You know what they did wrong? They were the reason why the Egyptians got to that sea in the first place. The Egyptians could never have got into have chased the Jews without the horses. Okay, the horses didn't do anything wrong, but they were the reason, they were the sibah, they were the reason why the Egyptians got there, so they had to die as well. So Miriam turned around to the Jewish women and she said like this, she said, look, if the horses had to die, they had to be punished because they were the ones who were behind the Egyptians coming and chasing the Jews and wanting to commit the crime of killing every Jew, man, woman, and child. And that's what happened to the horses. So look at the other side. Us, and she's talking to the women, us who were behind the men, we were the reason why they came out of Egypt. So look at us. Look what type of reward we're going to get. The horses, because they did bad, they were killed. Us, we bought life. We bought the Jews out of Egypt. We're going to get the Torah. Look what reward we're going to get. And you know, Hashem rewards good 500 times more than evil. You do a good act, it's 500 times more. So Miriam said, what are you worried about? And that's why they sang Azashu Moshe. Of course they sang the whole song, but this was their clarion call. This was their banner that they were waving high. The horses got punished because they bought the Egyptians here. We bought the Jews here for a good reason. Look what reward we're going to get. And that's what the reward the women will get in the future, because this Geulah is going to happen because of the women as well. There's no question about it. The women will be the driving force behind the Geulah. There's nothing more to talk about. That's it. So, again, let me just very, very quickly finish. I really don't want to take too much time. The Ben Ish Chai has an idea on the two why does it not mention anything about Sinat Chinam in the Haggadah. Sinat Chinam means baseless hatred. The reason why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the second one, was purely because of Sinat Chinam. Baseless hatred, meaningless hatred, right? So we should mention it in the Haggadah, so we should know not to do it again. Where is the hint in the Haggadah about baseless hatred? The Ben Ish Chai found it. You know where he finds it? None other than Manishtana. It says Manishtana. Why is this night different from all other nights? Because normally we dip once. This day we dip twice. Matbilim shtei pamim. What's that got to do with anything? The Ben Ish Chai says these two dippings that we do are different with two different types of dippings that we had in the past. One dipping was when the brothers dipped the coat of Yosef in the blood, and they bought it and they said to the father, look, Hakerna, recognize this. It's your son's coat. No? Look, it's full of blood. He must have been killed. Yeah, that was done through Sinat Chinam, because the brothers hated Yosef. That was pirud, that was separation. The second dipping is the dipping of the azov, which is the hyssop grass, which we dipped in the blood of the Korban Pesach. We put it on the mashkof. We put it on the lintel of the door, and that's how Hashem saved us. So what was that dipping? That dipping was the dipping of Achdut. This was when we were all together. We knew we were going to leave. We were 100% brothers. Yeah, there was no pirud. There was no enmity. We were one nation going out together. So the Ben Ish Chai says in the most beautiful way, only the Ben Ish Chai can do this. He says, look, the first dipping the blood, that was showing separation. But the second dipping, when we dip the blood of the Korban Pesach and we put it on the doorpost, that is the dipping of unity. So it's the correction of the separation is to bring achdut, to bring unity. And that really is what Pesach is all about. Now, we know there's another, I'm finishing with this. It says in Dayenu, if you would have taken us out of Egypt and just brought us to the desert, without even taking us to Har Sinai, Dayenu, that would have been enough. Yeah, Dayenu is the most beautiful prayer. It's a time of year when us as Mashhadi Jews, we beat each other senseless with spring onions. If you're Persian, you know what I'm talking about. It's a universal minhag amongst the Mashhadim, amongst the Persians. We take spring onions. And behind all this, there's a beautiful message that comes with Dayenu. And that is that it's Hakarat Tov, it's gratitude. Hashem, you could have just taken us into the desert. So the question is asked, what on earth is this talking about? What do you mean? Had you just taken us into the desert and not taken us to Har Sinai, that would have been it? You know, after 210 years, go all that time and then take us there and say, okay, bye. And that's it? That would have been enough? No, that's not enough. Take us to Har Sinai. Take us to Israel, yeah? The best thing, take us to the Dan in Herzliya, put us up in hotels there, any hotel, give us 5-star treatment, then give us the Torah. At least we can watch it from our air-conditioned bedroom, or even better, we'd be in the pool. What more do you want? What's all this desert business? You bring us to the desert? Why you bring us to the desert? Give us the Torah. Give it to us in a better circumstance. So this is the story that the Ben Ish Chai gives. There was once a rich young man, came from a rich family, and he came to marriageable age, and his parents wanted to find him a shidduch. So, you know, as they say, money marries money. So he was from a rich family. They gave him all sorts of shidduchim from rich families. And each one he said, no, don't like her, no good, no good, no good. They were doing their nut, this family. So in the end, this young man says, look, I'm not doing my parents any favors by staying here and rejecting every shidduch they're giving me. Let me leave, let me go out, let me find my own shidduch. So he leaves town, he goes to a different town. And he probably thinks there nobody knows him. But as soon as he gets to the town, everybody recognizes him and they're all giving him shidduchim. This rich fellow's giving his daughter, that rich fellow's giving her. They're throwing shidduchim left, right and center. The guy is the luckiest guy. And again he's saying, look, I don't know who you think I am. I don't want to go. I don't want this girl. I don't want this girl. I don't want the... In the end, what does he do? He finds a girl from a poor family. She's got not even 2 pennies to rub together. Nothing. He says, this is the girl I want to marry. So he comes home to meet her parents, and the father sees this guy come in. He's dressed to the nines. He looks like really like Ashira, really rich guy. And this rich guy comes into this poor girl's hovel, and the father's like looking at him, and he says, Mr. So-and-so, I need to speak to you. I want to marry your daughter. He says, what? You want to marry my daughter? Of all the girls you could marry? Yes, I want to marry your daughter. I'm so in love with her, I will marry her no matter what. I need your consent. I'm saying no matter what happens. And not only that, I will look after her in the best way. She will want for nothing. And even more than that, you and your family will come and live with us, and you will also want for nothing. I will look after all of you. So now, this rich man is like, he's thinking, what on earth? He says, you know, he says, it's very nice what you're offering. You know, we don't get offers like this every day. But there's a problem, because your family will never, ever consent to this shidduch. They want you to marry into a rich family. They want somebody who's really, you know, suitable for you. We live a very poor lifestyle. So the rich young man says, he says, I understand what you mean. I am prepared to give all that up. Forget that. That is my old lifestyle. I will come, I will be like you. I don't need to live a rich lifestyle. I'll do whatever you want me to do. So the rich man, the poor father says, okay, you know, that's a very kind thing you said. But it's one thing to say it and one thing to do it. So if you're really sincere and you really are willing to give up all your luxuries and whatever to come and marry my daughter, I want you to prove it. I want you to live with me for 1 month. And you're not going to wear your rich clothes. You're not going to have your fancy meals. You're not going to go to a fancy place. You will live with us and do exactly what we do. The rich young man says, no problem. He goes, he says, give me what you want me to wear. He changes his clothes, takes off all his designer suit, whatever he's wearing, and his designer shoes. He wears shoes with the holes in them and clothing with holes in them. He looks like mamash, like a evion, like a pauper. Fine, he doesn't care. He wants to marry this girl so much. He lives with them, he eats bread and water, nothing. After the 1 month is finished, the father thinks, wow, this guy's really sincere. He's not complaining anything. He must really love my daughter. He says, you know what? I can see you're very sincere. So I want to show you something. Come here. And he takes him to one room in his old hovel. It's surprising that he had more than one room in this house. He had one like rickety old room, like a wood partition. He says, I want you to open the door. So the young man opens the door and he sees in this door cobwebs and all sorts of creepy crawlies. And in the middle of the room, there's only one thing there. It's like a chest, like a wooden chest. It looked like it hadn't been opened for 100 years. So the father says, look, open the chest. So the young man says, well, me to open it? It looks like it's never been opened. Father says, trust me, open the chest. He comes, he opens the chest. He couldn't believe what he sees inside. This young man, his jaw is on the floor. His eyes are bulging. He sees in this chest gold, silver, pearls, jewels, everything. He's like, what? There must be, he's thinking that there must be millions in here. He looks at the father. The father looks at him and says, you know what? I'll tell you the truth. Really, I'm a very rich man. And I could have had a very beautiful house. He says, but I chose to live an austere lifestyle, a poor lifestyle, because I only have one daughter and I don't want to marry somebody for money. I wanted to marry somebody who she's supposed to marry. So I put aside all my riches and I put them, and I didn't tell anybody about them. And now I see that you're sincere. You really want to marry my daughter. Here, this is going to be your dowry. You have my blessing. And he marries the daughter and they have the money and they live happily ever after. Beautiful, lovely story from the Ben Ish Chai. What's it got to do with us? You know what it's got to do with us? Because that's exactly why Hashem took us out into the desert. Because he said, look, my Torah, which I want to give the Jewish people, comes with brachot. It's the best thing. You will lack for nothing if you have my Torah. This will set you on your way, not just for this world, you will get the next world as well. No question. Oh, I'm not going to give it to you for nothing. I want to know, do you really love my Torah? Do you want my Torah so much? You're willing to give everything for it? The Jew said yes. So what did God do? He didn't take them straight to Israel. He stopped in the desert. And he said, look, I'm going to give you my Torah now. There's going to be sand, and after the sand, more sand, and then even more sand. There'll be scorpions, spiders, there's Amalek around the corner, all sorts of lovely things for you, quote unquote. Yeah, but you really want my Torah? And how do we reply? Na'aseh v'nishma. Of course we want your Torah. We don't care what it's got in it. Whatever you give from your hand, it's beautiful. And because of that, Hashem said, for you, I will give my Torah. Because you would have accepted it even in the worst of conditions. So I'll give it, and you're going to go into Israel and you're going to have everything. Yiratzon, this year, Bezrat Hashem, through all our poverty that we're seeing by being in Galut, and it doesn't matter how rich a lifestyle we live and how much we think we're free, we're still slaves, as we just said. So we should all see the kiyum, the end part of the prophecy of Hashem, and Hashem will take us, despite all the poverty and all the slavery, will take us to Eretz Yisrael. And we'll have Elion Navi this year. with Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the Bayit Shlishi may happen techav u'miyad without any pain. V'chein is on Lomar Amen. Modim l'simcha, chagim u'zomem sason.